Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist. I am the host of Audiobook Connection podcast, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks. I'm excited to have with me today Brian Brady. Brian is the author of the Fog City Stories book series that starts with "Oh, What a Tangled Web." And Brian, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So I understand that you're a former police officer and corporate security executive. Tell us a little bit about your background and how that has played a role in your writing.
Okay. I was born and raised in San Francisco. So that's the background for the stories, basically being in San Francisco in the Bay Area. I started law enforcement in Berkeley. Spent 9 years in Berkeley. And then I took a promotional exam and traveled to East LA and spent a couple of years working out in East LA, and took another promotional exam and moved to New Mexico and spent 4 years working in New Mexico. And then took another promotional test, came back to the Bay Area, to Nevada, which is about 30 miles north of San Francisco, and stayed there for the duration of my career, and then retired as the police chief after serving 12 years as the chief. Then after that, I got a call from a good friend in Los Angeles that said that he had done some work for Universal Studios and that they were going to be looking for a new director of security for the studio. So, since I had done this before and traveled, I threw my hat in the ring and I got the job. A big shock. I thought they'd stay with somebody from LA, to be honest with you. So it was a whole new learning curve coming back from the Bay Area to Los Angeles. And Universal Studios is a very, very unique company because we're not only a movie studio, but we're a theme park. We're a retail establishment. We've got 80 plus stores on City Walk, bars, restaurants. At the time, we had the amphitheater. And of course, you have worldwide movie production. So I was responsible for security for our production crews wherever they were going to shoot movies. So it was a great job, and it was fascinating. You meet lots of interesting people, and I did that for 10 years, and then came back to home again and took a job at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. They were moving from their old museum into a new facility, and they were expanding from roughly 50,000 square feet of art space to 165,000 square feet of art space, from a 3-story to an 11-story building. Yeah. So I was responsible for security for the new facility, and it was fun. It was totally unique, and it actually was the basis for the third book, which dealt with art theft. So I had the opportunity to work with some of our curators and restoration people and learn a great deal about the art world. And the beauty of my travels, I've worked in different states, I've worked in different agencies, I've worked corporate side, the public sector side. So as a result, I've collected a lot of anecdotal information over the years, which gives me a great basis to tell stories.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm curious, when you mentioned that you were traveling, or that you were keeping at Universal Studios, you were protecting the cast and crew. Did you travel as part of that, or was just that was just on site?
No, I could have, but the options were, it was my responsibility. So I had a group of people that I had worked with over the years, and companies I'd worked with that did international security. And I really relied on them, put the boots on the ground, so to speak, to put the people in place. And it's depending where we're shooting. And there were some places we just didn't go. I mean, I would sit down with a director and just tell them, no, we can't go. It's just too high risk. Because some of our productions are 230 to 250 people. and you're responsible for all of them. And if you're in a foreign country, it becomes more difficult, because if something does happen, whether it could be a terrorist act, a disaster, could be an earthquake, could be a million things, you're responsible for everybody. So I would have a liaison with the U.S. Embassy or the consulate, but that would only be for all our people who were carrying passports. But we would have people from Germany, Ireland, Great Britain, Spain, France, all working on the production, carrying passports from those countries. So our consulate couldn't do anything for them. So you'd have to go and get each consulate from each country to be able to have a plan in place to evacuate their persons. So without getting too great detail, at the time we were owned by General Electric. And I don't know if people understand this, but General Electric, aside from being a gigantic company, is the largest aircraft leasing company in the world. They lease aircraft to foreign countries. A lot of planes that are flying under a banner of a foreign country are owned by GE and leased to that country, complete with service, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did, we called GE and said, can we get a plane big enough to carry 220 people, which happened to be that production, out of North Africa to Malta? And they said, yeah, we have a 767 or whatever it was that could accommodate those people. We could fly it in. So what we were able to do was our evacuation plan, we could load everybody on the plane, regardless of passport, all go to Malta and then clear all your customs in Malta to the various countries but get everybody safe. So it was my responsibility, but I had great people to work with, and they call RSOs, regional security officers, at the embassies and consulates, and they're fantastic. They work with you hand in glove. And then the other consulates were great, and then of course GE came through with the plane, and that became part of the operation. So it was, but putting all the pieces together was fun. I mean, to make it all, to start with a bunch of people in a foreign country, how do you get them out? When you're dealing with,
sounds like a giant jigsaw puzzle or mystery.
Yeah. So, but I had great people around. I had great bosses. That was the other thing. I had the people at Universal. They had been with the production side, the movie side of the business for forever, and they knew the business and they knew how to get things done. And they were patient with me coming in as a novice. And they shared their expertise. So it made my job so much easier.
Cool. Wow. And that's such a diversity of experience, it sounds like to me from the outside,
it is.
That you've gone through in your career. That's fascinating. And so when you started writing, tell us a little bit about how that you started thinking, oh, I've got to write a book.
Yeah, I really didn't, to be honest with you. I did, though, because some of the stories were fun. I would make notes, sometimes just cryptic little notes, sometimes a little more detail, and stick them in a file folder. And I had the folder. And if we'd go someplace with friends and, over a cocktail, and you're talking, and just like you asked me about the movie production. So you'd share a story, well, this is how we did it in Casablanca, or this is how people are just fascinated by the whole movie industry. And have you ever met this person? And so there's a certain people being starstruck, and so you'd share a story, and at the end of the evening, people would come up to you ought to write a book. Those are great stories. And I thought, maybe. So then I had some free time. When I went away from the museum, I still do consulting work with a security firm, but it gave me, most of that's from home. So it gives me some time. So I started putting together some of these stories, and that's really how the book came about. And then once I got it pretty much written, I shared it with people, and the reception was good. And then you're aware of all this. And then your next step is, you find an editor who's willing to work with you. And then you send your editor 50 pages of War and Peace. I mean, this is great stuff. I mean, you have labored over this, and this is New York Times material. And they give you back 60 pages of corrections. And so you find out that you're not Hemingway. You're an idiot. You have really screwed some things up. But once you get past, the angst of the redlining, they're helping you. They're making your story better. So over the 3 books, I've worked with 3 or 4 different editors who have, and each of them have a skill set, and I've used all of them sometimes on the same book, because some of them do really, really great stuff, proofreading, for instance. Others do a better, are really good. They kind of get what I'm trying to say content-wise, and they make quality revisions to make the intent more clear. So that part they've been they're a huge help. You can't function without them.
That's right. Professional editing is not something to skip over or think that I've been through that same process myself. Yeah, you go.
It's like in college. You write a term paper, and when you finish it, it's perfect. But there's typos, there's misspellings, and
right.
spell check doesn't catch them all. And you need a third party and a fresh set of eyes to look at it before you turn it in. And that's kind of what happens with the books.
Yeah. So you wrote "Oh, What a Tangled Web" first,
correct,
right? Okay. And then you must have enjoyed it enough that you decided to write more. Tell me about that experience that you had of sort of developing into an ongoing writer.
Yeah, it was, I did like it when I finished it. I really liked my characters, and they are composites of people I have worked with and known over the years. There's no single character that is a single person. They really are this composite. One of the characters who, as she comes in the first book, she was the hardest one to write, because obviously I'm not a woman. So I'm trying to write the way she sees things. So she's a composite of probably 5 different women in law enforcement that I've had the pleasure to work with, and who shared their experiences, expertise, etc. So I think she's a pretty good character, because she's really representative of real people and real experience. So when I finished it, I was pretty satisfied, and you get pretty good review from your friends. And then you have really good friends who tell you, I really liked it, except. And that's great too, because if someone took the time to read it and tell you what they did or didn't like, you owe them to listen to what they have to say. So one of the people who read the book is a good friend, and he's in Los Angeles, and he's a retired fire chief and worked with me at Universal. And he wrote back, he happens to be Italian. And Bob wrote back to me and said, great book, really loved it, but there's no Italians and no firefighters. So the second...
Did he feel left out?
Yes, the second book, Hiding in Plain Sight, is in San Francisco again, and it starts and is in North Beach, which is heavily Italian in San Francisco. And they're in the Italian Athletic Club. They're at Victoria's Bakery. They're in St. Peter and Paul Church. And the victim's father's a firefighter. So I put in the acknowledgments of the book, in the front, that, Bob, this is for you. It's like firefighters. So
that's great.
And then it's so you do get this feedback. So that actually kind of a push on the second book. I had ideas about how I wanted to do it, and the same thing. You go into the happened with the third book. The third book became different because I switched from San Francisco to start the story to Europe. It starts in Paris, and it goes to Amsterdam, and then to New York, and then ultimately there's a homicide in San Francisco, and then all my characters get to be in the story. But the first probably third of the book is outside of San Francisco, and that's different. And it was interesting to write it that way and kind of expand my horizons a little bit. And it allowed my wife and I to travel in Europe, and I've tried literally to, if I write about a place, I've been there. I've actually seen it, felt it, etc. I don't have north-south streets intersecting in my stories. If I'm going to talk about a building and I describe it as a 3-story building, it's not in reality 12 stories. So, and I'm working on another book right now where it ends up in Montana and Wyoming, and I'm describing a freeway intersection. Well, I actually drove up there and looked at that intersection. So when I described the off-ramp and where the shoulder of the road was in the story, it really is there. Now, someone in San Francisco maybe reading the book won't make any difference, but someone from Montana or Wyoming who drove that stretch of freeway is going to say, well, that doesn't exist. So I want them to go, yeah, I know that place. I know that off ramp. So
that's great.
That part's
do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy that research?
Yeah, I do.
Getting all those
really
little details.
Do. In Greed's third book, I had great help with that. The museum people were terrific in filling me in on just how art moves about and how much art is fake and how much art is out there that it looks great but may not be. And some of it's hanging in museums, and it happens. And
so. And when you were talking with them and they were sort of filling you in on these details, did they know you were writing a book?
Not at the time. No, I was just basically I was curious. It was a whole new world for me, and it was like at Universal when I was there. If I had any kind of free time, I would go to the sound studio, and I would just sit and watch the sound engineers put sound into a movie. It's the most incredible process. I always assumed when somebody put a camera out there and they shot a scene that's what ended up on the screen. Well, the visual may, but the sound is layered on by sound engineers. And so if it's a car skidding around a corner and there's gunfire, all of that's put on one layer after another by these brilliant people in the sound studio. So you get to sit there and watch them take this basically a blank slate that's quiet and layer in all the things you hear in that theater. And it just blew me away. I thought they were geniuses. They were incredible. And I could have spent the whole day there just watching them. The same thing with the engineers that do the work with colorizing. They'll look at a Coke can on a screen and say, oh, the red's off. Who's going to know? These people see and hear things that normal humans couldn't begin to comprehend. So the same thing at the museum. If I had opportunity to sit down, especially with the restoration people, they literally were, if a piece of art was damaged, they're charged with restoring that to its original. I mean, they have to get it just right. And they have a beautiful facility at the new museum. The light is great. The easels are thousands of dollars. These fantastic big easels and these marvelous people sitting there just with the most minute detail, getting it just right. Some of those paintings were worth multi-million dollars. And that was a big change for me. I went from Universal where if you were going to steal $10 million from Universal Studios, you're going to have to bring in a couple of 18-wheel trucks. You go to San Francisco Modern Art, you can walk out with $10 million in a briefcase. One painting. So wow. It's a whole different world.
Yeah. Certainly from the security perspective.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it changed.
Yeah. Fascinating. Brian, let's just take a short pause and we're going to come right back and talk a little bit more about the audiobook. Oh, What a Tangled Web by Brian Brady. It's a fictional account following the actions of a serial killer, preying on victims involved in the sex trade in the seedy strip clubs and escort services of San Francisco. The book follows the complex chain of events that explores the interconnectivity of the sex trade, S&M, organized crime, and prostitution. The story is centered in San Francisco's old off-Broadway area, but reaches into the surrounding Bay Area. The story follows the actions of the San Francisco Police Department's Homicide Bureau as they try to unravel a series of seemingly unrelated events. The story is complicated and suspenseful, creating a narrative that holds the reader's attention while keeping them in a state of anticipation. Get your copy today of Oh, What a Tangled Web by Brian Brady on Amplify Audiobooks. So let's talk about your audiobook. We're starting off with Oh, What a Tangled Web. And you have, tell us a little bit about your experience of the casting process.
Okay. Again, all new to me. I've listened to audiobooks, obviously, and I used to commute back and forth from San Francisco to LA on Interstate 5, which is a 6-hour drive. And Interstate 5 is great. It's fast, it's straight, it's boring, there's nothing. So audiobooks.
Perfect for audiobooks.
Yeah, audiobooks save your life on those long drives. So, but I had no idea how you find the person that's going to be the voice. So I dealt with you and Marcus, and I got snippets of people. I first I fill out the questionnaire. What am I looking for? What kind of voice? And they narrow it down for you. And then you get these audio tapes, short ones, of various people, and you listen. And which one do you think portrays your characters better? And you narrow it down to a few. And then they do a longer tape for you, and you get to listen. And you finally pick one, and then you meet the person. This is kind of cool. And you talk to them, and you find out that they're, as I told Scott, that he's doing the book. And I said, does your wife actually know who she's talking to? I mean, you're all these different characters in my book, plus other books that he does. And really nice guy. And I thought he knocked it out of the park. I thought he got the characters right. He got the tempo right. And they said, a couple of friends, when they read that book, they said, it starts out pretty dark. And well, it does start out dark. And I try and limit that to the beginning of the book and not dwell on it. I don't want it to be just a gory, excessively violent. You can't have a murder mystery without a murder. You got to start somewhere. I want the story to be about the investigation and the characters, not necessarily. So, he got that. But when I listened to it on tape, it is dark. It was a little darker than it I thought it was in print. So that was kind of an interesting experience too.
Is there anything else about? Yeah, I just wanted. You mentioned Scott. Scott Allen he's a wonderful narrator. We work with him a lot, and so I was excited when he got selected for your audiobook or audiobooks, because he's going to be doing the others. Yes, that's right. And so I'm curious if there's anything else about the audiobook production process that you've been through so far that kind of stands out to you or surprised you in any way.
Probably the level of detail. When Scott when he completed the first pass, Marcus sends me this list, and there'll be, that's 20 things on it, where it could have been a singular or a plural, as simple as that. And I wondered, I thought, gee, somebody's listening to the tape, are they really going to catch that? So then I went back to my sound time at Universal, thinking, yeah, they do. First, they do catch it, and you got to get it right. You want it right. You want the listener, much like the streets that don't intersect, you want the narrative to be right, and you want the audio to be right. So then it's a sit down going through, each line that there's any kind of issue with, and then Scott re-records it and makes sure it's right. And now we're down to the finished product on the first one.
Yeah, great. Tell our listeners a little bit more about where they can learn more about you and your writing. What's your website address?
Okay, the website is goldengatetales.com, and the books are on there. The books are at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, the written books. The audiobooks, I'm sure, are going to end up in the same place. And I've done book signings, and I'm still doing those. I've got one coming up in January on the 10th at Book Passage in Corte Madera in Marin County. It's a great independent bookstore, and they have a facility where they will host you. So I'm going to be their guest that night for they call it In Conversation. So it's an hour on stage where people can ask questions. I love that. I like to be able to answer people's questions about how that story developed and that sort of thing. So I usually keep my presentation very, very short and make the vast majority of it talking to the audience. So hopefully people will come and listen and ask questions, and then we'll do a book signing afterwards.
Yeah, great. And is there anything else that I either didn't ask about or that you really wanted to share, or anything about what impact you would like to have with your books? Anything else you'd like to share?
I think, the impact for me would be, I want to be Michael Connelly. So, right. You'll set your goal, and I love his characters. I like the way he writes, and I've actually had the occasion to meet him on a couple of different venues, and he is one of the nicest people. He's not taken by his fame and fortune. He's the most down to earth, and he'll give you time. If you ask him a question or something, he'll sit there and answer it. He's very generous, and so that would be, ultimately I'd love to be able to, like any also writes, what you need is a good agent. And I'm still looking for that. That's one of those things that, you submit the query letters and you get the rejections, and you keep doing it until you're going to find one that wants to represent you. And then, that makes a difference. That gets you in front of the big publishing house, and that gets the wider audience. When you're self-publishing or hybrid publishing, you sell books, but not at the level you're going to make a living at it.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes true. That's changing landscape all the time. Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much. I want to encourage our listeners to get your copy of the audiobooks from the Fog City Stories series at Amplify Audiobooks, which is the place where you can best support the authors. And so, again, Brian Brady, author of the Fog City series, starting with Oh, What a Tangled Web. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks, Meg.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.